everybody. Welcome back to the Daily Intelligence Briefing. This for October 18th, 2021. This is the video series where we give you the latest headlines and discussion topics within Christian polemics news and other discernment kind of issues you may want to be aware of out there on the interwebs. There's a couple things we're gonna discuss today. One, a Pew Research poll that came out talking about the behavior of churchgoers and American religious types after the era of coronavirus, which we are not out of, but as far as where churches and religious organizations are right now. And then we're going to review, speaking of churches and things, Kamala Harris. Is it Kamala or Kamala? Because she said it both ways, so if she doesn't know what her own name is, I'm not sure how we're supposed to know. But she produced a video shilling for Terry McAuliffe of Virginia, who she claims to be good friends with, and she can't even pronounce his name. Maybe she just has a problem with pronouncing names. I'm not sure, but we're going to look at a video that she made and has been distributing in black churches in Virginia to shill for a political candidate, which is entirely illegal if any of those churches are 501c3s. But we're going to go through that as well. Before we get to those headlines, though, the greatest headline, which of course, calling it a headline, it does not do it proper justice, but the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is of course the great news that while we were all sinners and worthy of God's wrath and eternal separation from him, God made a way for us in the person and work of his son, Jesus Christ, who came to the world, born of a virgin, lived a perfect life, and died a death that we deserved, paying the price to the Father to redeem his people and purchase our salvation. Great news for anyone who places their faith in him, repents of their sins, trusts in Jesus Christ for their salvation. Jesus Christ died on that cross to pay that penalty, suffer the wrath of the Almighty God that was intended for us. He paid that wrath, paid that price, died on the cross, was resurrected, raised from the dead on the third day, conquering death, proving he was God, now sits at the right hand of the Father and intercedes on our behalf as sons and daughters of God himself. If you have any questions about that gospel message, you have more questions about Jesus, please reach out to us, or you need someone to pray for you. We're more than happy to do that. Now on to the headlines. This first one coming to us from, this headline is at the Christian Post. Headline: nearly half of evangelicals say their church is back open with no COVID restrictions, according to Pew Research. And it's the headline is specifically about evangelical churches, but the article does go into a little bit more detail about other so-called Christian churches, mainline denominations, and places that I would consider not to be churches anymore in the actual theological definition of the term. But the article starts by saying roughly half of church-going evangelical Protestants are now attending worship services in person and without any COVID-19 related restrictions, a new survey by Pew Research suggests. So evangelical Protestants that were polled here, 49, almost half, 49% of self-described evangelical Protestants are going to services at least once or twice a month. So they're not even necessarily attending for every Lord's Day. They're not attending religiously, put it that way. Half of them are going to church, and yet this is the best result out of the different Christian traditions, quote-unquote Christian traditions that they polled. They're saying that 20% mainline Protestants say their churches are open. And see, what's confusing a little bit about this article, and maybe I'll dig into the Pew Research a little bit and get back to you, but it's a little confusing because they go back and forth between percentages of people going to church, percentages of groups going to church, and percentages of churches that are open. So this is an interesting little bait and switch that's in the article here. So this is churchgoers who are talking about whether or not the church is open. It's not necessarily saying they go, except in the definition. So They define evangelical Protestants to be those who typically attend services at least once or twice a month. That's how you apparently get to be defined as an evangelical Protestant in the Pew Research. And these evangelical Protestants are saying that their churches are open without coronavirus-related restrictions. Now, down to the mainline denominations, evangelical Lutherans and Methodists and United Methodists and Episcopal churches, things like this. 20% of those that describe themselves that way, mainline Protestants, say their churches are open, and 14% of historically black Protestant churches, and 19% of Catholic churches. So, and actually, this is it's not 19% of churches, but 19% of those who are polled say their churches are open with no restrictions. It says among religious attenders, evangelical Protestants, whites, non-Hispanic whites, Americans, white Americans, I guess they're saying, and Republicans are considerably more inclined than others to say their congregations should be open without pandemic-related restrictions. I fall into that definition, and I agree. And it says that a clear majority of overall American congregants, again, this is just anybody that describes themselves as being a Christian and going to church, 64% have actually gone to their place of worship in the past month. So and now this is an interesting one when now they begin to talk about vaccines. Pew also asked American congregants about their confidence in their clergy to provide guidance on coronavirus vaccines. 2/3 of Protestants in the historically black tradition, 2/3 say their clergy has encouraged people to get the vaccine. 42% of Catholics say that. Mainline Protestants, same thing, 42%. Evangelical Protestants, 21% of evangelical Protestants say they have received some kind of encouragement from their leaders. So it says, a small portion of evangelical Protestant clergy have encouraged congregants to get the vaccine. Quote, this from Pew, just 4% of evangelicals say they have heard their clergy discourage the vaccine. Adding that more than half of U.S. congregants, nearly 3/4 of evangelical churchgoers, say their clergy have not said much about COVID-19 vaccines either way. Yeah, our pastors at our church, and I would agree with this approach, take a Christian liberty, religious freedom stance and say, we're not going to weigh in on whether you should take the vaccine or not, but we are going to weigh in on saying that it's your choice. That's one thing. So they would be, kind of neutral on the vaccine itself being like any other medical treatment, your choice to do what you want to do, but they would be against mandating it like is being done. So you can see, I'm going to link this in the description. You can see this for yourself. It also has a link to the actual Pew Research itself. Now on to our next segment here. Kamala Harris breaking the law after Black Caucus endorses GOP Glenn Youngkin for Virginia governor. So the Black Caucus in Virginia endorses the GOP candidate, and Kamala Harris goes to shill for Terry McAuliffe of Virginia. And this, yeah, she's actually said her name while I'm on this. She's said her name a couple different ways. I've heard her say Kamala. I've heard her say Kamala. I find it hard to believe anybody's authentic who can't pronounce their own name. And it's funny because she says that Terry McAuliffe is a good friend of hers, yet doesn't seem to be able to pronounce his name right either. So she releases this video that we're seeing here. She releases this video that's being played in churches, in black churches in Virginia, shilling for a political candidate. It's directly opposed to the language of 501c3 tax exempt status. Let's play. I'm going to torture you a little bit with this.
Greetings, everyone.
Ugh.
So when I was growing up, we sang in the choir.
We sang. Come on, nobody. She doesn't say it that way, unless, of course, she's doing the Hillary Clinton. And I ain't no ways tired. These Democrats, they're so inauthentic. They get in front of what they think are religious audiences, or certainly Southern religious audiences, and all of a sudden they develop a twang. They just start talking different. It's just so ridiculous.
At Oakland's 23rd Avenue Church of God, we sang hymns about how faith combined with determination will see us through difficult times.
Then you weren't singing hymns, by the way. That's not what hymns say.
And we were taught that it was our sacred responsibility to raise our voice and lift up the voices of our community.
Also not biblical in the slightest. No, it's nobody's sacred duty to lift up their voices for the community. It's their sacred duty to be obedient to God. Of course, she's not going to talk anything about that. She's just going to use churchy language to try to fool people into. But see, the thing is, I think that Black Americans, just like every other American, can see right through this nonsense. They know that they're being, propagandized here by Kamala Harris.
One of the most significant ways I believe that we can each use our voice is through our vote. So Virginians, you have the opportunity now to raise your voice through your vote, because it's election time. As you know, this is an important election coming up on Tuesday, November 2nd, and early voting is already underway. I believe that my friend Terry McAuliffe
Terry McAuliffe. My friend Terry McAuliffe, who he's my friend. He's so much my friend I can't even pronounce his name right. It's Terry McAuliffe. You can see it in the spelling. You hear all sorts of news reports say Terry McAuliffe. He's been on the political scene for decades. But her good friend is Terry McAuliffe. It's ridiculous. And by the way, before we get to it, there's some in this video that I'm playing for you. This is at Black Conservative Perspective, which is a much bigger YouTube channel than this. And so they put her little video in there, so I'm taking it from there. But they have some pretty good commentary that I might roll into real quick after this.
Is the leader Virginia needs at this moment. Terry McAuliffe has a long
Terry McAuliffe
getting things done for the people of Virginia. When he was governor, in the wake of the recession, you'll remember, he brought 200,000 jobs to Virginia. Incomes went up and unemployment went down.
Yeah, this was every state, dummy. Sorry, I'm going to call it dummy. I'm going to call it dummy because this is a dumb point. Terry McAuliffe brought 200,000 jobs to the state. No. He was a beneficiary of the economic upturn that the entire country underwent. It wasn't because he did something special.
In every city and county in the state. And now, Terry McAuliffe is stepping up again with a clear vision about how to rebuild Virginia's economy for the future. To raise the minimum wage, to make health care more affordable.
More government
to give
programs.
Every child a world-class education. Virginians, you deserve a leader who has a vision of what is possible and the experience to realize that vision. Terry McAuliffe is that leader.
All right, guys. So when I first read this story and I first saw this video, the first thing that came to my mind was, is Kamala even a Christian? Right? Is Kamala even a Christian?
I'll answer that one for you. No, she is not. No, she is not.
Because I know they're rolling out a black woman to try to go get black women.
Kinda. She's not African American of descent, which I realize, like, if you have the right politics, that doesn't matter. You know, nobody cared that Barack Obama didn't come from slave ancestry any more than they care that Kamala Harris didn't come from slave ancestry. But to the Democrats, that's fine. They just need someone with the correct skin color
to vote, and there are plenty of those in the black church. But are they rolling out a Christian and trying to get a Christian to vote? That literally was the question in my head. And I went and looked up what religion Kamala was. And it sounds to me like she's Christian. But it also sounded to me like she might be Hindu. She might be Jewish, right? She's a shapeshifter. Not just in her race, right? In which sometimes she's, black. Sometimes she's Jamaican. Sometimes she's Indian.
This is so true. I've never seen a less authentic politician than Kamala Harris.
Might be a shapeshifter in her religion too, because sometimes she's Christian, sometimes she's Jewish, sometimes she's Hindu, right? So I really don't know, but it sounds like she is a Christian. Most of the time, though, when politicians are Christians, they're very vocal about it because they're trying to get votes, right? That identity politics. They're trying to get votes, okay? But Kamala doesn't seem to be using that strategy too much. So that's why I was surprised to see this, okay? But it is obvious this ad was targeted towards churches, and it's just flat out political speech because she's explicitly endorsing a candidate, and she's also not talking about political issues from a moral or religious perspective. Okay,
Yep.
she's just flat out being political. Vote for this guy. Do you guys notice how Kamala at the beginning, she said, "We sang," right? We sang.
We sang in the choir.
You should say we sung, but she said sang. She had to throw a little ang on it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the saying is the right word, I believe. but yeah, she went into the accent that she doesn't have, of course, being from California.
Put a little seasoning on it, okay? Ain't that's what the black folks say, right? Put a little seasoning on it because she knew where this video was going. She knew what the purpose of this video was. The White House clearly made this video to be played in churches. Like that's what they made it for.
And here it is right here, the political campaign activity that's banned under 501c3 status, saying that churches and religious organizations are absolutely prohibited from directly or indirectly participating in or intervening in. Now, is this direct or indirect? I don't know, but it's one of them. Any political campaign on behalf of any candidate for elected public office. This is speaking specifically. Now, I'm not talking about if your pastor is talking about political issues particularly, especially when they have a moral component, and they pretty much always do. It's not what we're talking about. But if your pastor stood up and say, hey, you should vote for Trump, or your pastor stand up and say, you should vote for Biden, you should vote for this person, you should vote for that person, that's really what the law is supposed to prevent in terms of a church having tax exempt status for its operation. And we could debate all day long, I suppose, about whether churches should seek Section 501c3 status, if this is really a limitation that should be placed on churches, or if your pastor should be able to shill for a candidate from the pulpit. I would hope that any membership of a church, any believers in a church that have a correct theology and a correct understanding of who God is and what his morality would be able to navigate the political waters from that basis. You start with your religious convictions. You start with what you know God teaches in his word, and you apply that to your political convictions. So those people that say, well, politics doesn't belong in the church, no, that's stupid. Politics doesn't belong in the church, except that individual Christians should be applying God's standard to their politics. So clearly the two things would be intertwined. I'm going to put a link to this entire video here in the description as well. Like I said, Black Conservative Perspective has a few more subscribers than we do. Something along the lines of, I don't know, about 100 times more, something like that. But it's a pretty good video overall, and I recommend you go see it if you have the time and you want to kind of see their analysis. I think it's pretty good. But that's going to do it tonight for the Daily Intelligence Briefing at Protestia. You want to see more articles, go to protestia.com. Subscribe to this channel, ring that notification bell to see the next videos. We will see you next time.